Hey everybody, how's it going? My name's Joe.
I'm also Joe.
Welcome to Recap. Jesus, 71. 71. Covering Ballz 3D, Young Merlin, Peacekeepers, Griffey Jr Presents Major League Baseball, and Equinox. First up, Ballz 3D. This game was balls.
They played about as good as it looks.
It's still the most confusing thing about to me is the basically sex porn in the background, where it's like, I don't know. This came at a time in the 90s when everyone was trying to pull 3D out of a 16-bit system.
Which doesn't
work real well. But boy, they gave it their best.
I mean, starting from the top, graphics.
It looks okay. I mean, it looks interesting anyway. The sound was awful.
The sound design was awful. Every character had two noises. Their hit noise and their get hit noise.
Yeah.
And every time you hit someone or every time you got hit, it would make those respective noises.
And the gameplay was shit. The hitboxes were awful. Trying to maneuver was awful. Trying to attack was generally not good. This game was
really difficult to tell if you guys are on even the same plane.
Plane, yeah, because of the 3D movement. It's not a good game. We don't recommend it. That's a solid 2 thumbs down. Next up, Young Merlin. This reminded me a lot of the old like King's Quest point and click adventures on the PC from like the late 80s, early 90s, and the graphics represent about as much. I mean, these graphics look like they were made in like MS Paint. They're not great. They're they're not great.
Yeah.
The music and sound design was okay. Nothing to write home about. The gameplay was sort of interesting.
I was not here for most of it.
It was a little slow. But basically what you do is you run around looking for these gems, and then you throw the gems into the water. A rainbow appears and gives you like your next power. So you're trying to collect all these gems to eventually, I guess, impress this girl's dad. I don't know. It's a real weird game.
I will say, while I was here, I did look up a walkthrough for you.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have gotten anywhere in this game without the walkthrough. Like, I think it is very, very ambiguous on where you're supposed to go.
Yeah, much like the point and click adventures, it has some what's called gamers refer to as moon logic, which means to solve the puzzle you have to guess something that you otherwise would never have been chosen in your life. Like the old point and clicks, you would get to an area and you'd be like, all right, I have 5 items in my inventory. I'm just going to use all 5 items on whatever is interactable on the screen until something occurs. And so it ends up being like, well, I mixed the shoe with the fish carcass and it did something. And you're like, never in a million years would you think like, oh, I bet the shoe does something with the fish. But it's moon logic. It doesn't have to make sense. The game played okay, but it's just not great. Yeah, that's a double thumbs down as well. The Peacekeepers is a 2-player co-op beat 'em up. The graphics, I think, looked fine. This is part of the Rushing Beat series, which was apparently very well loved, but hell, I don't remember it. Rushing Beat was what it was called in Japan. And bless me. Ow! I like pulled something in my neck. Jesus. Ugh. Anyway, the game looks fine. I mean, you know,
I think it looks pretty good.
I think the beat 'em ups were a good time in the 16-bit era, and they all looked pretty decent, generally speaking. I felt like the sound design was okay.
It didn't have music.
We shit on it for not having music. Someone did come back and say later, they're like, hey, the music for some reason is defaulted off. You could turn it on in the options menu.
Really?
Yeah. So there probably is music. We really kind of pooped on it for that. We both gave it a thumbs down at the time. I think
knowing that there's music, I would probably actually give it a thumbs up.
Right. I'm going to go neutral and just be like, look this game up if you want. Get some music in there. Because, like, otherwise all you get is the sound of, punch, kick, thump, thump, thump. And it was very boring and blasé to, like, play because of that.
Right.
And it's because beat 'em ups really generally have good soundtracks. And that's kind of, like, gives you the feeling of, fast and furious combat and everything. And so, like, we really kind of harped on that fact. But knowing that apparently there is music, who the builds a game and defaults the music to be off, though.
I don't know, man.
That didn't make any sense to me. Give it a shot. Like I said, we gave it thumbs down originally. I think it's probably worth at least looking up with the music. The storyline's real weird. The bosses were interesting. You know, it's a beat 'em up.
There wasn't a whole lot of cheese in it. Like, there wasn't a lot of what I noticed where you just get knocked down and then stand up, knock down, stand up, knock down.
Yeah, I mean, I was there. It just wasn't as prevalent.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad.
And I'm sure if we got further,
reader, but not.
Yeah, I'm sure if we got further in the game too, we'd hit that a lot more. But not bad, not bad. Next up, Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball. Graphically speaking, this game cracks me up. Right there was the perfect example.
Graphically speaking, I think this game is great.
Not every baseball player in the game is roided out, but this was made during the 90s and the roids era. And so all these players are just like, they played it up and they've all got tiny little legs and just these big, beefy upper torsos. And they come out and they chew bubble gum. And when they strike out, they're like, come on, man. Or they break their bat across their knee. And it's just entertaining to look at. And yeah, come on. And because of that, entertaining to listen to.
Right. I think it also had music.
It did have music, I do believe. And it's not like the music was something to write home about, but it was a sports game with music, and that makes a big difference.
I will say, gameplay-wise, it is not fun to play the pitcher.
Yeah.
Namely because you are only playing the pitcher because the fielding is god-awful.
Yeah. This fell into the trap of baseball games having god-awful fielding. Other than I think it was Super Bases Loaded too. I think I played that and the fielding was amazing because the AI actually did its job. But the fielding in this one did not do its job at all. However, the game looked good. The game sounded good. And with the second player, it was fun to play. We enjoyed it. We gave it a thumbs up. Mostly, honestly, I think because of how kind of into it the batters are. They're just kind of wild and crazy. Even if you're losing,
you're still
laughing along the way, and just having a good time. So we gave this one a thumbs up. If I was gonna get a baseball game, as far as getting one to play because it's good, I would go Super Bases Loaded too. Getting one because it's funny, Ken Griffey Jr. would take that easily. So a thumbs up for Ken Griffey Jr. And finally, we have Equinox. This is a weird game. It's an isometric.
Isometric.
Thank you.
Dungeon crawler.
Yeah, dungeon crawler. It really is kind of a dungeon crawler. Yeah. It's an action game. It's not really RPG. It's more like Legend of Zelda, honestly.
A little bit. The menu is reminiscent of
an RPG,
like a JRPG.
Yeah.
But it is...
You don't have stats. You have life and magic, which is very similar to Zelda. And when you beat bosses, those go up, kind of like heart containers and magic containers. And in every dungeon, you're going to find different weapons. Much like Zelda, you find different items. The music in this was okay. The graphics were, I mean, as you saw...
The music wasn't great.
No.
It was very, very quiet until you got to a boss. Then it had some banger sounds.
The music slapped when you got to the boss fight. I didn't care for the overworld map. That looks awful. They were trying to do that mode 7 bitmap rotating thing, and it just looked trash. But otherwise, the graphics, although a little cartoony, looked okay. Once you're into the dungeons, that looked great compared to everything else. But this is the dungeon, and it looks okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
It is difficult.
It is a difficult game. It's a
one
hit kill.
I played it with the controller tilted, so my D-pad was like an X like this.
It gets pretty confusing.
Because then you're going up in the right directions on the map rather than pulling it sideways and getting confused about which direction goes where.
Yeah, the isometric view does mess with your movement a little bit. But yeah, overall, I thought this was an okay game, and I could see playing it some more. It was interesting. Does it strike me as something that is amazing that I want to own? No, but... It played okay. It was enjoyable enough. I liked it, and so I gave it a thumbs up.
I don't remember what I gave it.
I think actually you were originally going to give it a thumbs down, and I think I kind of talked you into a thumbs up. You're like, yeah, I guess. So 1.5. It was an okay game. I think it's worth looking up. But that's it for Ballz, Young Merlin, Peacekeepers, Ken Griffey, and Equinox. A couple ups and a couple downs. Not a terrible week. A week. I call them weeks because we do 5 games in a set, and it takes us 2 weeks to get through them.
Not a terrible set.
Yeah, not a bad set. So that's it for set 71. We're starting 72. Hot diggity. But thanks a lot, guys. We appreciate everybody sticking with us all this time. Thank you very much. We'll see you later on the shows. Peace out. Guys.